guys, Todd from COSN coming at you again today. Hey, today what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a comparison video. Actually, it's been more than one day. I've done several weeks of testing and several months of testing, even years in testing on the PGU. But today what we're gonna do is we're gonna put all that together and I'm gonna give you a video comparison between the two bows. Now, it's been really an interesting process. I'm not an expert at archery. I am an enthusiast and also a bow hunter. But both of these bows are tested under two different standards. What I've done is I've put them on the same playing level and actually tested them. And on what we're going to do is I'm going to show you just the characteristics first, and then I'm going to go into arrow speed, which will kind of be a pretty good size section. We're going to go into poundage test, penetration test, decibels test, and I also did kinetic energy. And then I'm going to go into my personal experience on the disadvantages and advantages of both bows. They're both great tools. I want to say that right up front. They are both great tools, but there is some advantages and disadvantages to both bows. So I'm going to get into that, and I just want to make it perfectly clear again that, you know, I want to do an unbiased video of both these bows because I've owned the PGU for several years now. So I'm going to give the SAS a fair shake, in which I have during all the testing. I'll put all the characteristics, testing results, the links to the IBO, the AMO, testing, kinetic energy calculator, and I'll put all that stuff down in the description box if you guys are interested in that, and where you can purchase both bows. And no, I'm not getting any kickback off of selling them through the link. So, but I will put those links where you can purchase both bows. I mean, this really has been an interesting video, placing them under a different, set standard. And I think you guys are going to find it also very interesting. I've been in contact with both owners of both companies, asking them several questions on their testing processes. So, hey, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is going to be a good one. Okay, so I got the SAS, I got the PGU. Both of these are considered modern long bows. I'm gonna run through this really quick as far as characteristics and actual price goes and what you get for each bow. So the PGU, you actually get the bow, the retaining strap, and a Decron string. You get the SAS Tactical Survival Bow. You get the end caps that go with it, retaining strap, a Decron string, but you also get your pouch, and of course you get the bare arrow rest. You got to have the bare arrow rest to actually make this bow work, but that does come with it, so that's considered your buy. So this one runs $200, and this one runs $149. I won't get into disadvantages or advantages at this point. We'll do that at the end of the video. Now, they both can be converted into right hand or left hand. It is simplistic for both bows. One might be faster than the other, but once you convert, you're not going to convert back, especially for a left-handed shooter. All right, let's go into weight. Weight is 2.20 pounds on the SAS. We got 2.25 pounds on the PGU. Now let's go into material. Both are aerospace grade aluminum. So they say that this is aircraft grade T6 6061, which is a really hard tempered aluminum. You got a T6 aluminum, and they say it's used for some parts of spacecraft. I'm not really sure. They wouldn't tell me the actual nomenclature behind that. If it's 6061, it's 7028, they wouldn't say. They just wanted to keep that to themselves, so that's okay. It's a T6 aluminum. I'm not sure of the nomenclature on that. This is, again, T6 6061 aircraft grade aluminum. Okay, so all the hardware on this bow is coated, and all of it is stainless. Okay, all of your riser bolts, even your outside retaining limb bolts, they're all stainless. On the SAS, you have your stainless lug bolts, 3/16 stainless, and your limb retaining bolts are actually a high tension steel. And if you could see that, there actually is a little bit of rust on those. I have had out this in the rain. Probably a little bit of my fault for not doing upkeep. It does state on the website to put a little bit of oil on those. I have not, but it will get rusted if you do not oil those. Now, the limbs. Going into the limbs, these are actually almost the same. in dimension, the SAS is about a 1/4 inch shorter than the PGU in dimension. Okay, they come from the same factory. I'm not sure if they use the same processes to build them, but they do come from the same factory. This folds out, full length is 60 inches. This folds out, the PGU, full length is 59 inches. Okay, so the SAS is 1 inch longer due to the riser and the way that it folds out. And then folded is 21 inches on the SAS and 23 inches on the PGU, which is a 1.5 by 1.5. This is 2 by 1. Okay, so and it had been mentioned on materials and different videos that I've seen that on the PGU that this could be a possible weak point. And I'm here to tell you, I've had this for 3 years. I've also seen it used as a club. And unless you ran this over with a heavy vehicle, this is not a weak point, or unless you completely mistreat it, use it as a pry bar or something with that nature. You'd have to really work hard, very hard, to break this bow. This is not at all a weak point, just to make that perfectly clear. On the SAS, it is a pretty thin square tubing. It's looks like about a 1/16. I did not measure that. You have holes in the end, and you do have another hole underneath the grip. And you have grip tape on here. I'll get to that later in the video. Alright guys, so this is the bow performance testing between the SAS and the PGU. Now, before I get into arrow speed and all the different testing that I've done, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, there is room for human error. And I am taking averages, and that will make it more accurate. But at the same time, some of the tests by professional companies use machines and they're very precise. So I just want to make sure that's perfectly clear. So let's go ahead and jump into arrow speed. I'm going to go over the SAS first. They were tested, and both these bows are tested under 2 different standards. The SAS was tested under the IBO standard, which is the International Bow Hunting Organization, and that test consists of using a 350 grain arrow at 30 inches, bare string, and shot by machine. So that being said, it's going to produce pretty fast feet per second. Okay. They claim on the website that this has 210 feet per second. Now on the PGU, uses an AMO standard, which is an older standard, which is the Archery Manufacturing Organization. And that standard is basically taking 9 grains of arrow weight per pound, which averages out about 495 grain arrow at 30 inches bare string. Okay, which produces, and they're claiming that it produces 181 feet per second on the website. So I just want to make sure that that's clear before I get into my own testing. Now what I've done is I've actually put both these bows on the same playing field. Now I'm using the same grain arrow on both of these bows, which is 450 grain arrow, and my draw length is about 27 inches. It's a little over. That's why I said there's some human error that goes into these factors, but I am taking an average. So 27 inches, and I don't have, like I said, no machine. I'm taking average speeds, and I'm also using the Cadwell Ballistic Precision chronograph to capture my arrow speed. I really like the chronograph. It's a little bit of a lower end one, but it also has your phone application where you can shoot, you can do average speeds, and it calculates everything for you. You can actually take out low arrows or high arrows or missed shot arrows. It's a great chronograph. Highly recommend if you wanted a chronograph for not a lot of money. It's a great chronograph. Okay, so getting into the level playing field, I shot the 450 grain arrow out of both bows, 27 inches, and we're going to do the deductions, or the plus or minus deductions, to do 30-inch draw and also to put it into an ABO standard. And I'll explain a little bit more here in a second. So I'm going to call my raw score, or my raw feet per second on the SAS, and that's, like I said, at 27 inches, 450 grain arrow, we're shooting at 144 feet per second. And you might be going, well, whoa, that's pretty low compared to what they have on the website. Well, we'll get into that. And on the PGU, I'm shooting 146 feet per second. And I'm going to put all the deductions up on the screen here in a second for you so you can actually see how all this is calculated. And I've got this from forums, from bow magazines, archery websites, and a lot of different information. Then I'll also put that down in the description block so you guys can see where I've got that information. And you know, you got to calculate in your silencers, you got to calculate in your brass knock. All that stuff drops down arrow speed. So I took and calculated, and at 30 inches with a 450 grain arrow, it's shooting at 181 feet per second. The PGU, calculating the same calculations at a 30-inch draw with a 450 grain arrow, is shooting at 183 feet per second. Okay, so now we're looking at, all right, we got the same standards for both. Now let's put them into the SAS standard, which is the IBO. So doing the calculations, and I'll put all this stuff down in the description block because I don't want to go over all the different numbers and what they mean. They'll all be down in the description block if you want to see how this was calculated out. So at 181 at 30 inches of draw, and we're going to make the calculation for the arrow. So they're using a 350 grain arrow, and it's 100 grain difference. So we're going to take and do the calculations. And we're also going to take the silencers off and the knock off. The silencers are 3 to 5 feet per second loss, and the brass knock is roughly 2 to 3 feet per second loss off of the information that I've found. So doing all those calculations, put it in the IBO standard, we're talking about roughly 201 feet per second. So that's pretty close to their website. Their website's stating that 210 feet per second. But when you start adding all the stuff on the string, and depending on your actual draw, is what you're actually going to get. And what I actually got was 144 feet per second. Now, on the PGU, we're going to do the same thing. My raw score was 146 feet per second. And we're going to go to a 30-inch draw with the 450 grain arrow. And we're sitting at about 183 feet per second. Okay? Now, putting the PGU into the IBO standard instead of the AMO standard, and it's the same standard that was used on the SAS, the PGU is producing 203 feet per second, which is over what they have on their website, and their website states at 181 feet per second. So it's kind of an interesting test that when you drop them into the same categories, the ABO standard, that they stack up almost identical. Okay. So there's a little bit of reason why the SAS is a little slower than the PGU. I'm going to explain here in a second when we get to the poundage test. Now, during the poundage test, I contacted both companies to make sure that I got the right measuring points, and also varying from a either single point or a 3-point. What I mean by that is you're pulling down with 1 point, or you're pulling down with a 3 point. So both companies state that they used the 3-point poundage test. And they also stated where I needed to measure on the riser, front, middle, or rear. So I went ahead and tested both of these several times, more than 3. I've actually tested them about 6 or 7 just to make sure that I was within, make sure I got the right average. So on the SAS at 28 inches of draw, it's 53.50 on my testing. On the PGU at 28 inches, I have 55.70. And I think that has a lot to do in the differences in the arrow speeds, which they weren't huge difference, but there was a gap there. And I think that has to play into the gap. Now, in all fairness, that they don't test every bow that comes out of the factory, and that's understandable. You don't test every one, or some companies do. But both companies do not test every single bow. So this one was at 55.7, and this one was at 53.5. So now moving on, and this goes into the same as the poundage, but we're going to get into penetration test. So what I use a ballistic plastic actual target. It's 1/16 inch thick on both sides, and it gives a great tool to actually shoot and get a accurate penetration. Now on my previous videos on the PGU I was using broadhead, so it's going to be a little bit different of a penetration test because I'm actually just using field points. So the SAS with a 450 grain arrow, it basically penetrated from the back of the target to the tip 4.5 inches, and the PGU penetrated about 4 3/4 inches, and that can also be due to the poundage again. And I shot 10 arrows and took the average of 10 arrows. Okay, so now moving on to, and I thought, you know, let's do a decibels test, and I was going to do it bare string, which would probably be the most correct way to do it, but since I had silencers already on the PGU, I added the exact same silencers to the SAS with the brass knock, so the strings are identical, and conducted a decibels test. Now I wanted to see, some people are interested, you know, how much noise do they make, you know, how loud are they, can you get a second shot? So I went ahead and conducted this test, and I didn't necessarily use a soundproofed room, but I used a well-insulated room, and I was shooting outside of the room into the target so I wouldn't record the arrow striking the target. Now the SAS got up to 94 decibels, and I usually take an average of 3 to 5 shots, and on the PGU I took another average, of course, of 3 to 5 shots, and it came out to 90 decibels. So the PGU is a little bit more quiet than the SAS, and I think it has to do with the actual hollow riser, and it made that a little bit different. So they're really close. Now going into the next thing is, you know, I had a few questions about kinetic energy and talking about kinetic energy generated at point break when the arrow is released. So there is a calculator. I put that down in the description block, got off a couple bow websites, and it's basically giving you foot-pounds of kinetic energy generated at point break. The heavier the arrow, the more you generate, the faster the arrow speed, of course, the more you generate. Now, on the SAS, it generates, with the 450 grain arrow, 181 feet per second. It gets 32.74 foot-pounds of kinetic energy. And with the PGU, same thing, 450 grain arrow, but you have 183 feet per second. We have 33.70. So that's your kinetic energy that's built. I'll put a chart right up here on the screen and in the description block to what that calculates out to. They came out to with this average of what kind of animals you can hunt with different types of kinetic energy. All right. So moving on, just basically performance between both these bows, I'd have to say is pretty dang close, and they'd probably almost be identical if the SAS was actually at a true 55 pounds at 28 inches. I would say that they would be almost spot on. So really boils down to personal preference, and we're going to get into the features of these bows and take a look. Okay guys, so I want to get into features. You know, what it really boils down to, since these are really close into performance, that it kind of goes into features, what your personal preference is, and what you're looking for out of a survival bow. You know, I want to say that both these are great tools before I get into features, and then I'll get into my personal opinion. So let's go ahead and jump into compactability. So you've probably seen on other videos that the SAS actually folds down shorter than the PGU does. It folds down to 21 inches. The PGU folds down to 23. The big thing about that is you can get this into a lot of day packs, a lot of 3-day packs, assault packs. This will fit into a lot of those day packs. Now, with the PGU, it's a little bit long, and some of the day packs it won't fit into. I don't find this as a really big deal because basically either I strap it on the side, or I use my quiver and put it inside of the quiver that I have made, and I also have one from PGU that I use to put this inside of. So the SAS does fit into a day pack better than the PGU does, and they're about a 2-inch difference. Alright, looking at reliability. Now reliability, I really can't speak for the SAS. Now the only thing I can speak to is the way that it's made. It is actually made really well, and it looks like it's going to last a long time. But I have only had this for about 4 to 5 months, and I have shot about 200, 250 arrows through it. It has worked flawlessly, So at this point, I'd have to say that it's well built and it could be very well reliable in the long run. Now on the PGU, I've had this for several years, almost 3 years, and I have beaten this thing. I've kept it strung for a year. I've put it in hot cars, cold cars, you know, down to 5 degrees, up to 120 degrees. I have shot probably easy over 1,000 arrows to this, and I can speak to its reliability and its longevity. This bow will last you probably a lifetime, and I'm going to keep using it, keep just shooting it, and I'm going to have this bow for a long time, and I'm also going to give you guys an update in the future on the SAS also. Alright, so moving on to special features. Now, special features on the SAS, they've actually added a couple special features. One of the ones that I do like is that the square tubing, you can install plastic plates, and you can take your breakdown arrows, so you can take 3 of them, and you can actually insert them and keep them inside of your bow, inside of your pack. So you know you always have 3 arrows with the SAS. The only thing I don't like about it is I did keep some arrows in here for about a month, and the fletchings on them started to retain the shape of being stuffed inside this tube. So that's something to be watchful of and mindful of, is I'd probably keep arrows inside here for about 3 months maximum, especially using the rubber type fletches. So I would definitely only store them in here for 3 months, or if you're going out or something, you know, go ahead and throw them in and roll. But that's one of the features on the SAS that I do like a lot, is that it does have a compartment to put your arrows, and you can throw it into your day pack, which is pretty nice. Now, and it does come with, also, since we'll go over that, it isn't a feature of the bow, but it does come with a case. Now this case is made of almost like a Cordura, or, you know, I'm not sure if it's 100% nylon. I'm not really sure the material. I forgot to ask the company, but it looks like it's well built, double stitched, has Velcro, and you can put your SAS bow in here, and you can put some supplies up top. The only thing I don't like about it is the string you really can't put up top. I wish they would have just kind of made no Velcro on the top side so you can put your string on there, but that string gets caught on that Velcro if you put it on the upper side. Not a big deal, but you can put your string like I do in the inside and then put your bow in. You can also use this as a quiver, you can use it as a backpack, and carry this around with you. So that's kind of one of the features that comes with it. You also get the bare bow rest that I really like. It can have a tendency to break. You could rip this flap off, so I definitely suggest, if you're gonna use this bow, that you have an extra bare rest with you, and I'll go over that here also in a minute. Now, on special features on the PGU, the biggest thing I like about this bow is there's not a lot of moving parts. You don't have to remove anything, you don't have to do anything to assemble this bow. You flip out both limbs, lock them down, string your bow, and you're ready to go. That's the biggest thing I like about this as far as features go, is it's very simplistic. Okay, so let's move into comfort. Now, comfort's going to be personal preference. I'm kind of speaking more for experience and what I have found to be comfortable. So, SAS, we're going to go over, and I know this is a little bit nitpicky. I'm going to contact the company and make a suggestion. They put a really aggressive grip tape on this, and this will tear your hands up. And I've got mechanic hands, and this stuff is rough. So I wish they would have put more of a rubberized type grip tape on there. Would have made a lot more sense and would have been a lot more comfortable. It is kind of a big grip, so if you have smaller hands, it could become an issue, but it does have a big grip because of the actual size of the riser. Not a big issue, it just depends on what you personally prefer. On the PGU, as far as comfort, it's a very slim design, smaller design, so if you have smaller hands, this would probably be way more comfortable for you. And it's just a nice smooth design. Both of them are aluminum, so in the heat or in the cold, they could be extremely hot or they could be extremely cold. So that's something to remember. I have shot this when it was extremely cold out, and it will make your hands go numb. But all right, so moving on. The other thing too on the SAS versus the PGU is the Archer's Paradox. So what that means, and you see here in the picture is that your arrow is offset from center of your string. So when you're shooting it, you have to adjust for that. And on the PGU, they actually have a cutout shelf. And that's one reason on the SAS you can use rubber fletchings, and on your shelf type modern recurves or recurves, you use a feather fletching, but you bring your arrow more true and more to the center. Okay, it's not completely centered, but it is more centered and gives you a truer shot, in my opinion. And some people on this one, it's still a good shot, but you really have to adjust to get that arrow on target. And shooting both of them at the same time, making this video, I really had to concentrate when I'd switch back and forth, switch back and forth, switch back and forth. But now I'm pretty used to both of them. So that's another thing. Alright, so these guys are so close in performance. You know, and through the testing, it is just really, really close in performance. So it kind of boils down to features, what you guys like, what you guys don't like. So, you know, you can judge your opinion off of, you know, my testing. You can look at it. If you have a friend that's got the bow, you know, check it out. And first and foremost, you know, they're both great tools. I'm just going to tell you that right now. They're both great tools. I prefer the PGU, and I'm going to get into my personal opinion right now after all the testing and everything is done. My personal opinion is I still prefer the PGU, and I'm going to tell you why. On the SAS, it's a great bow. There's two main things I do not like about this bow. One is the archer's paradox, where it goes to the left. You know, you basically have to adjust to make that shot. And I guess one of the really, really big things is the locking lug nut for your lug for your limb is a two-piece, and you have to remove it to assemble this bow. And that little piece, if you drop that and you can't find that in the snow, in the desert, in the sand, something happens, or you're not paying attention and you're walking with it and you didn't tighten it and you lose that piece, this bow becomes inoperable. So if you're going to buy the SAS, two things that I highly suggest that you do is you buy an extra lug bolt off of their website for $20, and you also buy an extra bear rest, and they're about $10, you know, Amazon. I'm not sure what they are on their site. But if you're going to buy the SAS, I would highly suggest that you get a lug bolt and you get the bear rest. It costs you an extra $30, so about $230 you can get this bow. And the biggest reason that I like the PGU over the SAS is that it's simplistic. There's not a lot of parts to break. There's not anything to remove. You basically open the limbs, rotate your locking lugs, you lock your limbs in, you string it, and you're good to go. That's it. So, hey, I thank you guys for watching. You know, make your comments, good or bad, it's okay. And if you have any questions on either bow, you know, contact me, and I'll do my best job to answer those. You know, I know both owners of both companies, and you know, I can ask them pretty much any question and hopefully they'll answer it. Maybe not what the material is off the SAS, but they'll answer the questions that I ask them. So hey, if you guys have a question, let me know, and I thank you guys for watching, all your support and everything you do for me.